Hi, everybody. You're here for creating great experiences through collaboration. And let me just introduce us quickly. I'm Noah Gedrich. I'm the Director of Technology at Blitz in Los Angeles. I've been doing web development in some form or another for the last 15 years. And actually, Sean wrote a very nice thing that I provide a platform on which ideas can flourish and scale. But that's basically my role within the company. I'm the advocate for all technology and oversee all of that stuff. And this is Pep.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Perez. I generally tend to go by Pep because we have 5 Erics at the company. I've been on the creative side of the house I hit my 20-year mark this year. I essentially run the creative group, and I work to ensure that we essentially maintain a consistent creative vision across all of our projects. So work with a lot of teams on the stuff that we do.
And I'm Sean Scott. I'm the Director of UX for Blitz. I've been probably in the web for about 15 years, since about '94 when it kind of got commercial. My role at Blitz is obviously to oversee UX. My role on the team usually is badges and achievements.
He does love badges. So Blitz, for those of you who don't know us, we're an accomplished interactive agency specializing in growing and maintaining businesses, reigniting brands, so really trying to get brands really moving forward, particularly if they've stalled in any way, driving user and customer engagement, and user interface innovation. So we do a lot of work in that space as well. Some quick facts about us. We've been in business as Blitz for 9 years. Prior to that, the original founders of the company were up in Silicon Valley, known as eStudio. And after it gets referred to as the .com pause, they all moved down to LA to really actually focus on content and doing content development with web series and things like that. But they very quickly transitioned that into doing web development because that's what everybody needed. So we're based in Los Angeles with our headquarters. We have a satellite office in Seattle, which is really 1 or 2 people. And we're healthy, which is it's usually in there for a client slide. But we're actually doing quite well right now, looking to basically double the size of our company in the next year. And
you may want to watch them. Oh, no, that's the next one.
Okay. We're people-powered, so there's some fun shots of folks and the goings-on in the office. And thought leaders, so we speak here, we speak at MAX, we speak at FITC, all over the place. This is our reel, which I'm not going to take you all the way through because it's...
Watch the volume.
It's loud, and we actually haven't had a chance to update it in the last year. So for anybody who saw our presentation last year on transitioning from Flash development to Silverlight development, you've seen a lot of this. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick view of some of the work that we've done and maybe why to take us seriously as we talk about collaboration between designers, developers, and user experience.
There's the base.
Yeah.
It's very housey.
Mm-hmm. All right, that feels like enough. So I just want to start quickly by talking about the past. And just, you could see there was a lot of Flash work that we were showing there. And a lot of that was done based on this past paradigm. There were unicorns. I don't know if anybody else has heard this term. But these are the one-offs, the people who could animate, develop, they could do everything brilliantly. I mean, people like Joshua Davis, John Gurdon, Design Chapel, they're kind of inspirational to a lot of us as far as the work that they've done. But you know, we really need to understand what it was about that. I also love that picture of the fat unicorn. You know, it was really, it was a one-person shop. It was, I mean, if they weren't doing all of the design on their own, they were at least doing all of the animation and all of the development. And we call them unicorns because they're hard to find. They're kind of magical. You can't make more. You can't breed them. You can't train somebody to become a unicorn. They're just sort of, you either are or you're not. And it's really difficult to build a business around unicorns because they're so difficult to find and honestly, in some cases, to keep happy. So we really need to go beyond the unicorn. But why? So what's changed in the world that we can't rely on that, just aside from the business side of things? One, there's more choices for the users, for everybody. There's more possibilities today. And that leads to a scarcity of time and an abundance of choice and complexity. So we're really, sorry, a little confused. Yeah, we really need to address that, and that's, why is this not clicking?
Space.
Okay, more complexity. So we're not dealing with a one-off where you can just focus in the ActionScript world or in the Silverlight world. That's not enough to provide a really engaging experience anymore. We have tying in with social networks, tying into mobile. There's I believe that's a Surface table there. Being able to do things like that. That's a kiosk. All that kind of stuff doesn't just happen because I found one guy who can sit there and just do everything himself. So we need to, because of all those different touch points, we need different ways of collaborating and getting there. So how do we adapt to that? And I will turn this over to Eric or Pep.
So knowing that there's so many touch points and that the way users are interacting with those touch points is continuing to evolve, really the only way that we feel that you can really be successful as a shop like us, or really I think just in this whole medium, is through the culture of collaboration, through capitalizing on the collective. And so we've really thought a lot about it over the last few years and how we actually make it happen. And I think we've really start to establish some tenets that create the culture of collaboration at Blitz. And so we've learned a few things about collaboration. First off, it doesn't start in the meeting. It doesn't start in the brainstorming. It needs to actually start happening before that. It actually starts with the individual. And that seems strange to say collaboration starts with the individual, but it actually has to do with empowering the individuals to feel like that they can break out of their particular discipline and go talk to other disciplines, that they can schedule impromptu standing meetings with other people either in the shop or possibly even with clients in some cases, to start really diving into problems, to start diving into the current engagement or the next solution. The other thing that we really have pointed out a lot is that it is founded upon respect, and not just respect between disciplines, that like creatives should respect what devs can do, should respect what project management is doing, should respect what account management is doing, but that in our brainstorming sessions, we have the whole strata of the company. So you will have the chief creative officer riffing with a junior designer, riffing with a project coordinator. And so there has to be a mutual sense of respect there, that the idea that everybody can have a good idea, that everybody ultimately is creative. One of the great benefits of collaboration is that it creates a heightened sense of ownership early on in a project's lifetime. By having everybody invested in what is the problem we're trying to solve, what are the solutions that we have come up with as a group, everybody has, I think, a better sense of what the solution is that we're putting out there, how we're going to achieve it, and they're more invested in making it happen. And so that ownership ultimately strengthens the solution. And ultimately, you may think, we're pulling a lot of people into meetings, and we're talking about people maybe doing things with regards to brainstorming and ideation that isn't part of their core job set. But if you think about it, if they develop this sense of ownership, they have a greater understanding of the project early on, then when it does come time for handoffs to happen, and handoffs still do happen, you have less ramp-up time. So you're actually cutting down on your development time by spending more time up front. So I'll talk a little bit about our process of collaboration. It's really simple. It's divided into three stages. First, we start with discovery. So with discovery, we drive towards really thinking about the engagement and what is the problem at hand. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? I think a lot of times you will move into the second stage, which is brainstorming, and not really have a clear understanding of why are we even here? What is it that we're really trying to do here? This idea that we're just going to spitball a solution on the fly, it doesn't really work. When it does, it's the one-off. It's definitely the anomaly. So from brainstorming, we move to review. And so that's the idea. Okay, well, we had the brainstorm. We felt like we came up with the correct solutions. But ultimately, there still needs to be some opportunity owners who are going to vet that response and make sure that it really does satisfy the problem that we set out to solve. So now we'll dive a little bit into each of these stages, just briefly. So our discovery process is really about empowering the individual, and I talked about that a little bit before. Part of what we use the discovery process to do is to make sure that those people who are going to be coming to the brainstorming meeting are adequately prepared, that they know what the problem is, that they've had a chance to do some of their own research. Everybody is going to work towards solutions differently. Everybody has their own methodologies. And we're not trying to shoehorn everybody into the same methodology. We want every discipline to bring what they're good at to the table. But we want everybody to be equally prepared. We don't want anybody in the room who is just going to start riffing and not really understand, why are we all here? And to that end, we've created a couple of documents that we like to use that basically helps everybody come to the meeting and essentially be comparing apples to apples. So the first one of those documents we call the Internal Brainstorm Assignment Brief. Very wordy, but it is what it is. So in this case, this document usually works in conjunction with, I think, something that many of you are probably familiar with, which is a creative brief or a strategy brief. What we do here, though, is someone has read that brief, and now they have an understanding of the project, but then we outline for them, when you come to the brainstorm, be prepared to talk about these items. Be prepared to present your ideas around these types of solutions. And so in this case, we're talking about multi-channel deliverables, so, overarching creative vision statement. What's the overall vision for this particular project? And in this case, it was GuitarHero.com, which we recently redesigned. And so, okay, if you come up with a vision statement, what about the actual site conceit? And if you come up with that, what about additional features around functionality? What can we add to GuitarHero.com for the users that's going to, essentially create greater utility from the site for them? And lastly, we dive into marketing concepts, because as we've continued to evolve, we have become more and more of an integrated agency approaching a lot of different solutions. So now the expectation here is we have obviously a lot of things outlined. But even if someone comes to the meeting and they've only really been able to ideate around one of these pieces, they're already coming that much more prepared. And they already know what everybody else is going to be talking about. So you have greater potential for sparks to really fire in the meeting and for people to really have an understanding of, oh yeah, I couldn't really come up with a vision statement, but that one makes sense, and wouldn't it be even better if we did blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense, everybody? Hope so. The next piece we have, and this is really, I think, geared more for the new people to Blitz. It's a little bit of a roadmap. This is how you frame up your idea. So we call it the internal idea presentation template. We really got to come up with acronyms for these things. And so this just really lets people know, how are you going to talk about your idea in the meeting? And it really is, give it a title. Give it a pitch statement. I like to describe it to people as, it's the elevator pitch. You're in an elevator with someone, you got to tell this idea to you, got to hook them, you have 3 floors. If you can do that, then you move on to the next piece, which is, let's talk a little bit about execution. They've decided to ride up on all the way to your floor, so now you're going to tell them a little bit about how this idea actually gets realized. So in this case, this was, I think, one of my pieces around GuitarHero.com. And so my title was Music is Social. My pitch was, Guitar Hero has broken music out of the personal MP3 player and made it a social experience again. Let's extend that experience from the console to the website. And then I drive into how things that we can do to execute on that idea, possible channels and awareness, ways that we're going to drive people to the site, capitalize on existing APIs, et cetera. And then there's a little piece here as far as additional reference. Everything is visual, particularly in brainstorms. You want to keep them visual. So even in encouraging people to start thinking a little bit visually while they're framing up how they're thinking about their ideas, I think is pretty key. And so this can be anything from tears to frame grabs to photography to sketches. Just throw it in there so that you kind of get your creative juices flowing. And when we get into the meetings, you can have that piece, tear it, throw it up on the wall. We have a big screen. We put it up there. And again, it's just ways to keep everything firing for everybody and to have stuff that's relevant. So I think I mentioned this before. You know, our brainstorming process essentially acknowledges that everyone is creative. And to that point, I'll let Sean pick it up from here.
Thank you. So let's go over some, we're talking about collaboration today, and obviously collaboration happens over the life cycle of a particular project. But I think one of the keys to starting and creating a culture of collaboration is the brainstorm. I think that is one of the key elements. So kind of let's go through some really basic do's and don'ts. This is not, it's not a Bible, it's, parlay. It's a set of guidelines that you should follow if at all possible. And obviously so ideally you want to keep them short. 60 minutes is ideal, 90 minutes is a little too long. What we found, brainstorms internal versus brainstorm with clients, which they love, tend to vary as well. For example, with brainstorm with clients, we tend to create several sprints during the brainstorm. So give them 15 minutes sprints. So it turns into kind of 4 mini brainstorms. And that seems to kind of work very well, especially with a client that hasn't kind of done this before or is not accustomed to kind of the format you're going through. Another one is you really want to keep it playful, and you want to give a visual tone to the meeting. We've talked a little bit about that. There are different personalities, there are different stratas in terms of you got a CEO and you've got kind of a junior person, and you want to keep it playful, you want to keep it nonchalant. The next one is kind of a little icebreaker. I wish we had this here today, but obviously it's too big of a room. But bring in food, or start with an activity, whether it's building a Lego or just something to kind of break the ice, kind of get everybody kind of familiar with themselves and kind of how people react. No notes, don't take turns. There's a bit of kind of chaos reigns in a brainstorm, and I think it's not about who's the most vocal, but it's about, it's about flat surfaces, it's about walls, which we'll get into, and kind of just writing it on the sticky notes and kind of may the best idea win. The next one is, and we've talked a little bit about it, and at Blitz we really kind of reinforced that with kind of our discovery process. It's really to be prepared. I'm sure you guys are very short on time. Brainstorms usually, cost some amount of money in terms of all the different roles that have to be involved for 60 minutes. So it's really doing kind of your peers a favor and coming into the meeting prepared. And often also kind of a second side to that is brainstorm is not just the opportunity to blue sky, although as much as anyone, I think I like to do that. I think as Noah would put me on the point for that. But it's also the idea of understanding what the constraints are. And creating within those particular constraints. I say, if the rule, if it's flat, it's fair game. It doesn't matter if it's a table, if it's a wall. Grab some paper, grab some Post-it notes, and just kind of start writing on it. Usually what we do is 15-minute sprint. We figure out a constraint, figure out a vision, and we just have, if we have 6 people, we'll break out in a couple of groups or individuals and just kind of start sticking stuff on it. And then start kind of grouping things. So it's really kind of an organic process. And again, in terms of what artifacts or methods in which to sketch your ideas or surface your ideas, it doesn't really matter. We're not looking for Michelangelo. Stick figures, sketching, mind mapping, it's all kind of fair game. It's really about, finding the right way of getting your ideas out. And that could be a sentence, it could be a word, it could be a sketch. And then obviously you want to number your ideas. Part of brainstorming is obviously to come up with as many ideas as possible. But at the end, a winner has to be picked, or winners have to be picked. And I really don't like the idea of winning versus not. What it comes down to it's really what is more relevant within the constraints with this particular client, what's in budget. Oftentimes we'll reuse ideas that we've had in the past, and when it's more relevant. So it's not an idea of they're winning ideas and they're losing ideas. They're just ideas that kind of fit what we're trying to do for this particular client within this time frame. And then, you want to keep it democratic. Even though we have a review process, you want to keep it democratic. I think it goes a long way towards making sure that people have a stake in the process throughout. Brainstorm is a very kind of small part of a larger life cycle. So you want to keep people who are in the brainstorm involved throughout. So vote on the best ideas. Anything you guys want to add to that?
I actually just had a couple things I wanted to clarify. I think a lot of times when we tell people no notes, that usually raises a few eyebrows. And it's really, anything that's being generated in the form of a note should really be going up on the wall so that you keep the collective group feeding on that. The moment you start taking notes as an individual, you start pulling that attention in here, right? So that you're not really putting what you're thinking out to the group. You're not offering that insight out to the group. Another thing I wanted to cover really quickly was the idea with, we're talking about filling all the wall surfaces and using Post-its and a Sharpie, whiteboards, and fat, dry erase markers. The idea there is don't get mired in the details. This happens a lot to creatives. They start sketching something and they start really massaging all the details, and that starts taking away from the time from the group, and it also starts, you might be putting a lot of detail work into a solution that ultimately isn't right, and you've lost all that time. So that's just another thing that I think we found has really been beneficial as something you sort of keep in mind.
Keep the group small. I think you want 2 to 3 people per group. I mean, obviously, obviously the meeting itself can be bigger, but if you find yourself with 6 to 8, 12 people, you want to start kind of cutting the groups, dividing into particular groups. 2 to 3 is kind of perfect. And again, the idea is to have these particular groups kind of be multidisciplinary. So a creative with the UX, with the technology, or a PM. Keep them diverse. So now that we've found, now that we've kind of gone over, things to do, let's look at things not to do, or how to how to kill a brainstorm quickly. And we've, Blitz has done all of these, and it's important to note that as you guys, whether you guys have incorporated brainstorms or you're thinking about it, you guys will come up with your own set of guidelines. It's very tied to culture. So again, these are just based on our culture, based on our rules. But as you guys go through the process, you'll come up with your own kind of ideas. So the boss gets to speak first. The first title. Pep is my boss, and he tells me to shut up very often, but not in a brainstorm. So it's really the idea that in a brainstorm, it's flat. And it's flat not from we want to be democratic about it, but just because you never know where that spark, or that idea, where that concept is going to come up for. So you want to create an environment that enables or encourages people who might be shy to come up with the idea or just speak their mind. The next one is everyone gets a turn. And that's the idea that, oftentimes we'll have a moderator in the group. We've talked about how it's often a little bit chaotic, but just making sure that we've heard from everybody, or there's a Post-it note, or there's an idea out there. Making sure that everybody's participated is really kind of key, because they may not have the winning ideas for this particular brainstorm, but for subsequent meetings, it'll really show.
I think to that point, everyone has the opportunity to have a turn. But the expectation that you're going to run around the table and give each person a turn, that's not really productive. People, like I say, people can come to a meeting and really have only fleshed out one idea. So you might be talking about a feature that is after the idea they already created. And so then you're going to go around the table and go to each person and, do you have an idea on this? Do you have an idea on this? Do you have an idea on this? If they did, they would speak their mind and they would say it. You don't have to go around and ask people, because again, that's just a point of sort of slowing up a brainstorm, or possibly even derailing it by having someone start to talk about something that maybe they're not prepared to talk about.
The next one is, only let the experts talk. Whether it's somebody talking about design that's not a creative, somebody talking about UX that's not a creative, or somebody talking about technology that's not, a technology. I think everybody gets, to use the phrase we've just used often, everybody gets a turn, and their ideas can overlap other disciplines. Doesn't have to be necessarily, a UX person doesn't necessarily have to come up with a UX idea or an IA platform. We can talk about code. We can show examples, things like that. I think this is one of the important things to remember. Do it offsite, and by that we don't mean go around a different building or a different, it might just be if there's a lawn around, if there's another area. Basically remove yourself from kind of your usual surroundings, and that's great for, again, for encouraging kind of new ideas and kind of breaking out of a rut if you find yourself in. No silly stuff. We just talked about how, again, silly stuff engenders people feeling comfortable. So the more of it you have it, the better, obviously to a certain degree. And the last way to kind of kill a brainstorm is to write it down right away. And actually, this is the most important. The quickest way to kill a brainstorm, the quickest way to kill an idea is to find what's wrong with the idea. Because often when you blurt it out, when you write it out, when you sketch it out, it's just a germ to an idea that will probably evolve. Other people will add. So the worst thing somebody can do is start picking at the idea. Sorry.
Oh, no, not to cut you off, but just as Sean said at the beginning of this, Blitz has done every one of these things. I've personally done every one of these things. I've ruined many brainstorms. And what I found, I think, and this may be a typical developer trait, but when somebody starts talking about a possibility, you start thinking about how can we do it? How can we get that done? The same way the creative tends to go into detail, dev starts to go, how are we going to build it? How are we going to build it? And that'll shut down people from wanting to present ideas that maybe are really interesting. And the technique that I've taken on since then is, if I see an issue, to start asking questions that maybe lead to a solution to that issue, as opposed to saying you can't do that, but you're actually saying, how would you solve this? Or how can we improve this? How can we get around this issue? It's Facebook Connect. How are we going to, they don't really allow persistent connections. How can we get around that to do this? And then you get somebody going, oh, well, I already solved that problem. I knew that, and this is what I'm thinking about. So rather than being the black hat, as I used to be known in the brainstorms, I'm still trouble, but not in the same way.
The notes. Okay.
You have to click through them real quickly.
All right. I'm going to click. Some tactical issues, I'm sorry. How to kill a meeting. All right. So we've talked about 3 steps to kind of our collaborative process, at least the beginning of it. We've talked about there's a discovery process, getting everybody on the same page, kind of put out a sort of vision or strategy, basically get people prepared. We've talked about the actual brainstorm process. We feel it's very important. It's small, I think, part of it, but it's a key part of it. And now we're talking about the kind of the review process. And often I think, especially in business, there's the saying, one neck to choke. Over at Blitz, is kind of that neck is actually it tends to be the team leads, and we're just going to go over in terms of the process, the very 3 basic questions that we go through to make sure that the ideas that have been vetted out by the group actually kind of meet our standard or has the Blitz DNA in there. So one of the questions is, has the vision that we've set out early on remained true and consistent in the idea? Is it reflected? Is it is that the focus of the particular idea? That's the first question. The second question is, so how we solve the problem we've identified at the outset. It's often easy to fall in love with an idea and kind of go off on a tangent and develop that idea. At the end of the day, I like to tell clients that even though we are very big on badges and achievements and social, for example, the reason that we are is because at the end of the day, social sells. So that's a hard fact, but it's a fact that we have to remind ourselves and not just fall in love with the idea for the sake of the idea. And lastly, is the opportunity owner satisfied? That's really from a new biz perspective. The owner of the particular project, do they feel that we've done our job? We have the Blitz DNA in there, and it's going to meet the client's needs. And lastly, kind of the vetting process is if we can't answer yes to all of these particular questions, we assess what the gaps are, where did we go wrong, and then we kind of re-engage the process or restart the process. You guys want to add to that? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Actually, just the only point, that last one, like this idea of re-engaging the process, because we hold our brainstorms to be fairly tight, 60 minutes, the idea of re-engaging to make sure that we can fill gaps that we've identified isn't a daunting task, because we're pulling the team back in who is already familiar with the process. They understand all of the backstory. So moving forward, you put the gaps in front of them, and they know what they need to address. So it can be a very quick sort of catch-up to fill in any holes.
Great. So now we've talked a little bit. We've talked about the whole process through all the phases, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the tools that we've used or found useful. And the tools are going to vary from kind of what I call, conceptual frameworks to wikis or websites. How many people here know Tony Robbins, the TED speaker? Well, have heard of him, not know him personally. Okay. So Tony Robbins came up with a framework, and it's always when you tell clients that this is their solution is going to be based on Tony Robbins, they always kind of smirk nervously. But we say, trust us, it's worked for us in the past. But he's really come up with a framework that he calls it the 6 human needs. I know there's Maslow that has kind of the basic human needs out there. And I think if you go far back in your history buff, even Aristotle has one as well. So for all you kind of a history buff, we've covered our bases. But really what the frameworks kind of helps us do is it builds out a construct which helps us build out an experience that at the end of the day, it engages. When we're creating our personas, we're big believers in going beyond the numbers, 18 to 35, and going into what we feel are behavioral needs. That's where we feel like the distinct advantage, the distinct insight can come out of. So let's take a look at these basic human needs. So the first one is significance, and I think we all love to think of ourselves as unique, and I think we are. There's a special purpose that on Earth there's a special purpose or a unique mission for us. The second human need is connection, the need to feel part of a group. The interesting thing about this is that this creates a paradox. The need to feel unique and feel unique and different, and the need to feel you belong as part of a group. The next is certainty. So very basic. I start my car, or I push my start button. The idea that engine's going to turn on. I turn on the water faucet. The idea that water is going to flow. If you've had a pre-owned car like I have, and you turn that on and it doesn't start, that's probably one of the worst feelings in the world. So the idea that there's certainty out there is very important. But then the fourth need is the idea of that variety. At the same time, we need variety in our lives. And I think you guys are going to guess, creates a paradox between the idea of we want certainty in our lives, but we also need variety in our lives. The fifth need is growth. The idea that you progress through life. The idea that tomorrow or today was better than yesterday, or you did something better today than you did yesterday. The idea that you're going the right direction. Often it's found in terms of excelling in certain situations. The sixth need is contribution. The idea, again, sort of community, but the idea that you feel the desire to contribute to something greater than yourself, to help make the world a better place. My, Mr. USA speech, I guess. So those six needs can really be kind of categorized in two dimensions. So there's really two categories. There's personality, and we've talked about connection, the paradox with significance. Obviously, connection, the need to feel connected to somebody. Significance, the need to feel unique. The third need of personality is certainty. The need to know if I start my car, if I go to Starbucks, they're going to have my coffee. Versus the need for variety. I want to try something new. And then the two needs of the spirits, which are growth, that I'm going in the right direction and contributing, and obviously, contribution, the idea that I'm contributing to something greater. So why is this important, I guess, is probably the question that a lot of you are asking yourselves. Well, this particular framework really helps us when we're creating a concept or executing a concept or creating a UI. It really kind of helps us hone in on certain qualities of that user interface should have. It's not. I want to make sure that people know that it's not a check mark. It's not everything that we do is significant. It has a connection, provides certainty. It's more of an art to it than a checklist. And like what we like to say is something borrowed versus something new. So the first one is significance. Allows users to shine. So from a very brass tacks and pragmatic standpoint is make the user the hero of the experience. Think Facebook, your stream, your friends, you're in there. Connections, allow users to find like-minded and organize. Again, Facebook is a great example of that. Put in your Gmail, it's going to find your friends. In terms of like-minded people, it's gonna go out there and find potential matches. Again, those are two things that kind of reinforce those basic human needs. Certainty. So provide an approachable and intuitive experience. Oftentimes we'll go to clients and say that we tend to have, I guess, a deserved reputation for trying to bring innovative user interfaces or experiences. But we tend to go to the client and say, some parts of that interface is going to be brand new, hopefully, and part of that interface is going to be borrowed from best practices. It's not about creating something that's brand new on every level. Variety. So provide surprises around every corner. My favorite app of the day, Foursquare, does that. Badges, achievements. Some of the badges are clearly based on frequency. Some of them are new. I'm still waiting for my MIX badge, though. So. The last one is, the next one is growth. So reinforce the progress made and inspire new discovery. LinkedIn does a great job of this with their profile, their profile completeness gauge, going from 0 to 100% based on how much of your profile is public or how much of it you've completed. And lastly, contribution, which we're all very kind of aware with. Ratings, comments, uploading images, uploading video, things like that. And again, like I said, the idea is that it's not about check marking all 6 of these dimensions. It's always a balance. Fulfilling 3 of these engineer what we call a healthy addiction, if there's anything of that sort. So that was that's a tool that we've used in terms of creating experiences. In the brainstorm process, it's not something that we have tacked on. It's something that people keep in mind as they go through. Is my idea going to reinforce a sense of community? Is it going to reinforce a sense of growth? These are not prerequisites, but these are things that we look in ideas, make sure they kind of focus on it. User-centered design or user-centric design, everybody's heard of it, so I'm going to go kind of quickly over it. But obviously, we're big believers in it. That's kind of how we do things, and it's really about having the user at the center of the design process. Having their goals and behavior be the focus of it. And another important part of it is, obviously empathy is kind of important. We've just talked about that. But the idea of consulting with the user is super important in terms of every stage, whether it's focus groups, surveys, whatever you can do to get in front of a user, you want to do it. So what can we borrow from user-centered design to use in our tools for collaborations? Again, the approach, user-centered design is at its guts a collaborative process. It's a removal of the user architect. The user architect removes himself so that the needs of the user and the behaviors are centered. Empathy, again, removing the personal bias from the solution. In a collaborative environment, it's very important, just because, especially in a brainstorm, I'll use Noah as an example. Noah may come up with an idea, I may be like, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. And instead of trying to killing that idea at that point, you want to kind of remove yourself from the situation and let Noah develop that idea, let other people kind of start bouncing off. And it goes in terms of not killing the germ of the idea, but the idea of empathizing with Noah, trying to figure out what he's trying to communicate, and then helping him out. So those are kind of approaches you can take. Specific exercises that have proven very helpful are card sorting, whether it's open or closed. Again, the idea that people are, writing down categories, pinning them up on the wall. Sketching. Obviously, sketching can be a very kind of personal experience. At Blitz, personally, I usually I usually sketch with an AD, and we iterate through sketches to come up with a wireframe. And then iterative wireframing. Once you're past a certain, obviously, level and you're executing on a vision, iterative wireframing is, again, it could be a very collaborative exercise.
So I'm going to step in now, and we talked a lot about the ideation process and how we collaborate then, but then there's some things that we do kind of throughout the life of things at Blitz. And this seems really, really dull, optimization guidelines. But we touched a little bit on this a second ago in the idea of setting up constraints. And these constraints need to apply across a project, and they're actually very much user-focused. So what we have is, this is just a version of this document, but it's, so the idea is that we set this up for every project that we do. If you read through that introduction, it's basically saying, always think about the developer, or always think about your user. The developer is whatever's easiest. Who cares? For the designer, it's not exactly the way I want to see it. Well, no, but think about your user. And so we actually look at load time, HTML file size, things like that. And they're critical to understanding what it is that we're trying to do. And so if we set these goals for ourselves, we can actually inform back into the creative and design process and say, that's great, but you design the whole thing in red, and we can't really compress red very well. So if we're going to do that, we're going to blow out the optimization. Like we're going to have to go back and rethink that because it just doesn't work that way. I won't show you the one for our own website because that was the other version of this, and we actually failed on a lot of these things. And then best practices. Optimization is done for the user, which is the most important thing to remember. And then these are other just tips to keep everybody on the same page. I spent my time as a production artist, so I was able to inform a lot of that. And then actually the video compression tips, a lot of this comes out of actually, I think, the session that was right before us on media. The blurry is better than blocky. If you haven't seen that before, find out about it because it's actually really helpful. The IP library. So we have that template that we create for creating great ideas, or trying to capture our ideas. And those, I think in a lot of agencies, those disappear after a brainstorm. If it goes into a pitch, if you don't win that project, that thing never gets built. It just wanders off into the ether. Maybe somebody will remember it the next time they go to a brainstorm meeting, and they'll actually try to bring that idea up again. But the reason that we templatize that is that we could then put it into our lovely SharePoint IP library. But what we've actually done is we've set up those fields and things like the concept type, the big idea, the pitch, so that they're actually easily referenceable and sortable and findable. What project did we create this for? Did it actually get built? All that kind of information we're capturing here. And so we can actually kick off, if we have an emergency brainstorm. Oh my God, we have to come up with 12 great feature concepts for this project, and they want a proposal in 3 days. That's in most cases just a completely unreasonable ask. But because of this, we can actually say, okay, everybody who's coming to this meeting, go look through the IP library, show up with 4 ideas that you think can be, pull them out, massage them, get them ready, but you don't have to start from scratch. And there's some ideas in there that we've wheeled out plenty of times. They've just never...
Still trying to sell them.
Still, yeah, I really want to see some of them happen.
I think just a quick point about that also is that again, these previous ideas can just be good fodder for moving forward, for getting your juices flowing, for thinking about what may have been a similar issue and how did we work towards solving that problem in the past. And maybe that idea didn't get bought or it didn't see the light of day, but it could have still been valid. And so how can we capitalize on the work that went into crafting that idea and possibly make it apply to this next task?
And then just moving on, there's no good visuals for these. They're a little bit culture-based. They're a little bit, whatever. But so understanding trade-offs, I don't know if everybody, well, probably everybody is familiar with the fast, cheap, and good, but it's always good to remind people of that. You get 2 of those on any given project. You can do it fast and cheap, but it's not going to be good. That basically works that way. But getting everybody on board with that and everybody understanding what the trade-offs are. We actually spend a lot of time as we start taking on a new technology. So if we start working in Silverlight, or we're going back into going back into a lot of Ajax-based HTML development, actually sitting with the creative team and getting them to understand the trade-offs of what it is that they're going to be doing. So aside from that question of red, which I still hate compressing, is things like, we're building out an HTML site. Somebody wants all rounded corners, lots of drop shadow, all anti-alias text, and everything's got to be Ajax. Well, those are really expensive asks when you start talking about doing HTML development. They're not impossible, but if we're working within certain constraints of a budget, which we usually are, those are things that can really blow that out. And so what we try to do is actually spend time educating each other on the constraints and the reasons behind things. But that goes the other direction as well. I mean, I've worked with plenty of designers who said, I need this to be pixel perfect. And you go, yeah, whatever. I'm putting it, I got to break it apart to do the HTML, whatever. But as a developer, you sit down with the person who's saying, this is why it's like this. This is the thought that goes into that. And getting that explanation, I think, goes a really long way towards building the culture of trust and all of that. But really, just it makes a lot more sense when people understand why somebody's coming back with the other things. Challenge each other. We actually, it's a fun story for me. I was very impressed that this happened. One of our senior art directors went to somebody on the dev team and said, I'm building something in Flash. We're going to do this project in Flash. And I want to make sure that as I move my mouse around the screen, it highlights the thing that's closest to the mouse. It's actually, it's not a difficult problem to solve when there's 20 things on the screen. So they were like, yeah, we can do that. But that actually inspired them to go, well, how many things could we get on the screen and actually still do that test? How could we keep the frame rate up? How could we keep this thing still running well? And that led to what I described as a little nerd contest inside the dev team to see who could get the most points still being filtered without dropping the frame rate below 30 frames a second. And I think we got to 15,000 points on the screen. None of it matters. You move your mouse over that and it's all going to light up anyway. But it was something where creative actually inspired something to the dev team and then could feed back into that and say, oh, here's this thing. We actually do a lot of, and then this leads into the R&D, developers who are like, I want to build something using this. I want to use the bitmap tools and actually start, rendering straight to the graphics pipeline. But I'm not a designer. I don't know what to do. So they'll actually go and pair up with somebody on the creative team and say, I want to do this. Here's the capabilities of it. What can we do? How can we work together on this? So we have something that we're working on that's, non-touch multi-point input, so just using a webcam to track hands. And it's a cool thing, but I would never show it to you guys because it hasn't gotten to the next step where the designer's been on it and made it awesome. At this point, it's really just kind of it's a dev tool and it doesn't make any sense. And then the other side of the R&D is just making sure that we're constantly looking at what else is out there. And this is just a general thing, I guess, for everybody who's here. This is why you're here, is to find out what's next, what's coming up. But we actually spend a good amount of time looking at different marketing channels and how technology can be applied to that. I think creative is probably going to be doing the same this year and looking at how there's new creative solutions in certain channels. So we're doing things in augmented reality, which is big and everybody's all excited about that. But also looking at large format displays. We've built something a couple of years ago that was a 16-foot by 9-foot screen where we're doing rear projection so that it looked like it was floating in air. And that was something that we came up with because we were kind of poking around at what's in each one of these channels. I think we've identified 17 channels. Some of them get very hard. Print is very hard for dev to have a really good idea on what we can do, except if we're just doing print on demand. And though there's some cool stuff with the UV ink. But yeah, that kind of wraps up the other tools that we use. And so thank you, everybody. And we'll take questions and comments. If you guys have any questions or comments, please use the microphones because they're webcasting this, and that way everybody can hear. And then there's our achievement unlocked.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
The question I have is, how big is your agency, and then what's the ratio of creatives to technologists? Is it a 1-to-1, 1-to-2? And then the second part of that would be, is that what you think is the best solution, or just some more thoughts on that ratio?
So right now, Blitz is, I think we are pushing into the 50s now as far as total people. The creative department is getting close to about 20. So they're getting close to half of the overall size of the group. And then the rest of the shop is divided between dev, project management, account management, and some other administrative positions. I don't really think that there's any ideal size or ideal mix. The whole reason that we sort of came up with our process of collaboration is we realized early on that we were having the same people again and again and again in the brainstorming meetings, and it was creating kind of a star chamber that wasn't really scalable. So we had to start figuring out a way, as we were growing, how are we going to address as many engagements as possible, because as you get larger, you have to have more work coming in, you have to be able to engage it. How are we going to be able to scale up to have multiple groups working simultaneously on engagements that are coming in, and yet maintain a certain level of quality that we had established? So I think that was, I hope that answers your question. That I don't think there is an ideal size. I think it's more this model and how you can sort of retrofit it to your own group. And then it really gets down to the type of engagements you're taking on. Do you actually need a heavy dev or a heavier dev crew than like we have? Do you need a lighter creative crew? Do you have additional disciplines in-house like copywriting, video editors, documentary filmmakers, that kind of stuff? They can all be part of this process. It really is, I think, somewhat discipline agnostic.
Gotcha. Yeah, and just to add to that, we do actually have a fairly small dev team. If anybody wants to come talk to me and find out about joining our dev team, you're welcome to. But I would say we're outnumbered, definitely. Mm-hmm. I think we're 7 full-time in dev compared to the 20+ in creative. But that's actually just a factor of the growth that we've just recently had. Big spike in creative work, and now the coming growth in dev that corresponds with that. So the team that we have in-house tends to do the never been done the first time, the first iteration, and then if it's out there, there's not always a good reason for it to be done in-house. There's usually it starts to become a commodity at some level with some of the things that we do, and so we'll have somebody leading that project, but we're not necessarily handling every piece of it in-house. We'd love to. I'd love to, but it doesn't always make financial sense.
Right. Yeah, I have a question on different roles, like a business or systems analyst that may be more involved in the system design or the business rule design portion of the project. When they're a part of a project, how do you usually see them fitting in or collaborating with the other designers?
Yeah, I have to say that actually, so I've been with Blitz at 6 months, so about 6 months, a bit more, so I'm the new guy. And definitely Blitz, not just in the 6 months, but has kind of, I think, started evolving and growing. And we're finding ourselves with projects that do require business analysts. And those are projects of a certain size. Business analysts are often, I think for right now, and that's probably going to be evolving, but for right now, business analysts are doing the job that UX folks used to do in terms of discovery, figuring out what the business requirements are going to be, figuring out the BRDs and that kind of documentation. So right now, business analysts in the process are in early. They meet with the client and define what we call a BRD, or business requirements documents, that has all the, so this solution has to hit the following metrics. It has to hit the following, trouble spots. And so that's kind of where they fit in. And I think they're just another member of the team and are involved in the brainstorming as well. So it's, I know some shops just bring in the business analysts, they write up the BRDs is passed on, and you never see the BA ever again. It's not our approach.
Just one thing to add is having the business analysts up front, you can see how they kind of inform the documents that go out to the team prior to the brainstorm. They actually start helping define what are the solutions that we're seeking, what are the particular items that we should be ideating upon to hopefully solve a client's issue, or create the solution to the engagement.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah, it does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So you may not have started off or set off with trying to address the kind of question that I have, but I run a small startup, a very fast-growing startup, about 9 people right now. We started about 8 months ago. I find some of the principles that you've discussed from a creative design firm perspective very, very relevant to a product-based company as well. And we're a product-based company that's very design-focused. We have this kind of problems all the time, and how do you brainstorm? How do you make a team most effective? How do you make a 60-minute meeting yield the most possible, etc.? A lot of the concepts that you seem to talk about, bring more people in, and all that stuff, seem to make a lot of sense from a creative design firm perspective, where it's very project-based, where it's a services business. How do you take that into a product-based business as well? The team's going to remain the same. The top management will always be there. 6 or 7 people that need to be in most major decisions will always be in the major decisions as the product develops as well. How do you mix it up then?
Well, I think that, as you said, a lot of it does carry over. There's a lot of the same thing. If you have a product that you're developing, and I don't know what your product is, but if you have a product that you're developing, it's trying to serve a need in the marketplace, a need for a user. And so you're trying to examine that problem. What is our problem? What are we trying to solve? And then how can we get that group together to do that? So a lot of that stuff still carries over. As for how you do it with a staff that's shifting, where you only have you have the top 3 within the company maybe, and then other people who are kind of being used on an as needed basis. That I don't really have a good answer for. Obviously it doesn't take, with the way we're structured, it doesn't take years of experience to be prepared to come to a brainstorm meeting and throw out a good idea. I think it takes somebody to teach how to brainstorm effectively and not, it took me years to stop shooting down people's ideas. Seriously, I've gotten chewed out many, many times for it.
He's still learning, by the way.
Just Sean's ideas. But yeah, so you need somebody who can effectively moderate, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring in, if it's temporary staff or it's a couple of people, you can bring them on. You can probably supplement. You can bring on an information architect or somebody like that for a week to just help participate and craft great ideas. We supplement our staff. Eric said we have 20 people in the creative department right now, or 20 plus people, but I think 2 weeks ago, if you counted our full-time employees and supplemental staff, we were in the 30s.
Yeah.
And those people weren't necessarily excluded from participation in this. It was, if it made sense, if they had time, if they could spare an hour to participate in this, we definitely included them.
And I think I can jump. If part of the question is, how do you keep it fresh? And I think that comes to a certain extent in terms of framing the problem correctly, I think, or framing what the constraints are. And I think pushing people to really kind of find inspirations in not just your vertical, in other verticals. I think that's something that I do all the time, is when we're looking for solutions, whether it's we're launching a new Cisco product, we won't just look at that same vertical and who's doing what well. We'll look at examples like, there are abundance of examples Zappos, how are they innovating on the customer service front? Mint.com. So obviously those are not Apple to Apple, but they have a certain way that they go about doing what they do, which I think at the end of the day, that's the most valuable thing. It's not the execution that's valuable, it's but what is their frame of mind? How do they attack this particular problem? And that's at the end of the day what I think you want to try and capture. So I think to me it's a simple answer. I don't know if it's simple, there's nothing simple, but I think it's making sure that you constrain kind of what the brainstorm is going to be about, making sure that you give folks the freedom to say, look at other industries, go online, go to design portals, just give them some freedom to kind of go outside the box, and I think that's what's going to keep you fresh. And I think from a staffing perspective, it's having the office manager in it as well. Having the support, the support staff, which we don't think of at times, but again, it's really, if you believe in the idea that a good idea can come from any portion, it's really kind of including those, on top of, like you say, the product manager that's going to be there, for the next 2-3 years. So I hope that helps.
Just one thing to add is the perception that our brainstorms are always very large. I think, to my point, we tried to establish a process that's very scalable, and that means it can scale down to match particular opportunities. So if we have an opportunity in that maybe isn't the massive one, that's going to require a team of 8 or 10 in the room, that it could just be a group of 3. It could be a UX, a dev, and a creative in the room. They're sort of addressing that problem.
Cool. Do we?
I think the hard part of a product-based business, I think, or at least the challenges that I'm facing revolve around, different people in a project-based business or a services-based business have been lead at different times. Mm-hmm. In a product-based business, it's very, very hard to take your CEO hat off or take your COO hat off. And I find myself battling with that all the time, where I would like for people to be very, very involved, and I would like for my word not to be the last word. Right. And I'm finding it very hard to create that culture. I
think one of the easiest ways to do it is the next brainstorm, don't be the lead. Appoint somebody else to be the moderator, and you be one of the people who's just a contributor. And at the end of the day, you may go back and vet the results, but that'll be out of the brainstorm. Cool. That might be a way just to start fostering that kind of give and take.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the presentation today. And my question is based on clarification. In the beginning, when you were doing the brainstorming review, the 3-step thing, you had 2 documents that you used. One was brainstorm document, and the other one was template. I forgot what you called it.
Sure.
But my clarification was, do you use those internally and then with the customer, or is it just something that you finalize with the customer as far as the documents?
Right now we use those predominantly internally. The first one is really, it's sort of the prep document for the people who are going to be in the brainstorm meeting. It's come to the brainstorm having thought about these particular items. And then the other document was, and I sort of pointed this out, it was kind of for maybe the novice to the brainstorms, or the people the disciplines that haven't been involved before. It's really, this is kind of a roadmap of how you're going to frame your idea out. And that roadmap is actually designed in the same way that we put those ideas into our proposals, so that we're actually cutting down a step for the person who's ultimately going to be writing the proposal, that the ideas that are coming in are already kind of framed in a way that makes them more easily transferred.
Thank you.
Sure.
Welcome.
Hi, my question's also about the documents. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if those were publicly available and if you can drop a link to them.
We can make them publicly available.
Yeah, they're not currently publicly available. I think we need to scrub them a little bit better. If you start
the ones we show
them,
are actual working samples, but
yeah.
We actually have ones that are totally more templatized and have call-outs just talking about what we mean by each piece, without obviously diving into any true IP. But I don't think we'd be opposed to.
But yeah, we can definitely. I can't think of any reason why we couldn't make those available. And we have our website is blitzagency.com, and there's a blog on there as well, labs.blitzagency.com. So we probably publish through the blog, and we try to push tools out to the community as often as possible. So I think it's a good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. That's it.
All right. We'll be over here.
Thank you.
Thanks.